Hey, how you doing? Martin Lopez here from Curiosity Theory, and I'm out here in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, at my friend Max and Mabel's house. Just want a big shout out for them hosting me out here, hanging out with Max and Mabel, his their son Mikey. A big shout out to Mikey. He's joining the Air Force, and so he's going to go to basic training this week on Monday. So we're having a big party here tonight to send him on his way. So Mikey, thank you for your service. And Max did well over 20 years of service, so thank you for your service and all your service members that have given service to our country. God bless you and thank you for that. Off to our topic. So how does curiosity affect the brain? I kind of like stumbled on that topic. I would say almost accidentally, because I'm always studying how the brain works, and I'm always studying curiosity and always interviewing people, and just intrigued in how people use that. And there's a guy that I know, his name is Dave Farrow, and I met him. I've actually known him for probably 7 or 8 years. Amazing guy. He's got courses online. I've taken some of his courses. I've read some of his books. I have some of his audios, amazing stuff. I highly recommend checking him out and following him and getting some of his stuff. I actually learned how to speed read with taking one of his courses. And so when I have a book that I'm just kind of like, this is not getting so good, I kind of speed read through it. Otherwise, I take my time. I usually take my time when I read. But the thing is that every time I talk to Dave, I learn something about how I think, how I process, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to be talking about today. And so when I was talking to him earlier, just a few minutes ago in the green room, he was like, "So what's the topic? How we're going to, what are we going to talk about?" And just like all the hangouts, right? We have a topic, but really, we're just going to kind of go where we go, and I'm going to try to keep us on topic, but sometimes we just kind of go in a little different area. And I'm really intrigued because in my course, I talk about the reptilian brain, the limbic brain, and the neocortex. And I'm really intrigued how other people look at it, how they use it, how they are using their brain to make their lives better, and how they use the brain to help other people make their lives better. So let me bring on Dave and let's get going. Hey, buddy.
Oh, hey. I was just sitting here chilling, relaxing here all of a sudden, and now we're on the show. I'm kidding. I was waiting for you. This is gonna be a good topic. This is gonna be a lot of fun. I like when you talk to people about curiosity because I think everything stems from that. Yeah.
How so?
Well, when you're talking about the brain, I think it's the missing piece of learning and the education system. I talk about the education system a lot. And really, it's not just one system; it's 1,000 systems. Whether somebody is homeschooling or whether they're, early childhood education, or they're dealing with somebody on a spectrum of some sort, or you're an adult returning to work, or you're at work and you have to learn a new software program. These just off the top of my head, these are different things that people ask me about as a memory expert. And everybody has a system, has a process by which you do it. Either maybe you hear a lecture, then you do quizzes, or you do something more hands-on. There's all different things, and that's what most of my my memory career has focused on is how to improve that system and make it work for everybody. And I've worked with teachers, spoken at colleges, and as you know, I'm a best-selling author. I've sold over 100,000 copies of my programs and made millions of dollars in sales for my memory courses. So I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. The missing link, I think, is that it all starts with curiosity. Like people usually, when they come to a system, they think, okay, I have to learn this. I have to, right?
Yeah,
and once you're at that point where you, but once you're at that point where you have to, you've kind of lost some of the battle because you have to want to. At least your brain has to want to learn the information. And that's what curiosity is simply a desire to learn something new. That's basically what it is. And if you can cultivate that in children, they'll be little geniuses. If you can cultivate that in yourself, you'll always be on top of your game. And if you lose that curiosity, then, you're going to have people surpass you in your career, or not just career, like hobbies and just joy of life. If you lose curiosity, you lose it's almost like you're opting out of life. So I think curiosity is the core of it all.
I love that you said like the opting out of life. I think that's really what I've found for so many people that I've talked to, that you say, I'm not a very curious person. And when they became more curious, then they found more joy, more excitement. They started to do stuff that they forgot that they even wanted to do. Like, oh, I remember when I was little, I used to roller skate. So I went and bought me some rollerblades. And then I looked up roller skates. I got me a pair of rollerblades and roller skates. And like, I'm having so much fun. And and it just keeps going and going. That wonderment, that just those childhood ways.
And I think we get so caught up in making money, right? And like
Yeah.
everyone's got to pay the mortgage and stuff. And if you're at a point in your career where you're not worried about that, but you're worried about, thank you, Tucker. If you're at hi, Sarah. Hey, it's a friend of mine from my Facebook. If you're at a point in your career where you're even financially successful, then you're wondering, where's the next thing coming from? Where's the next challenge? But if you try to memorize without curiosity, it really feels, to me, I call it nails down a chalkboard. It feels like that sort of grating feeling, like I can force my hand down the chalkboard, but I really don't like it. And your brain is like that too. There's a lot of there's a lot of detail on this. So I authored a double-blind study at McGill University. I'm very proud of it. It was where I applied some of my own theories of memory. And for those of you who don't know, just I don't know the bio that we had here. I'm a 2-time Guinness record holder for memory. That's the biggest credential that I have that says, hey, I have the right to talk about what I'm talking about. That's the book right behind me. The certificates are up on the wall here. I assure you it's all legitimate. There's somebody wrote about me in a magazine. This is the opposite. So I keep on wanting to point the wrong direction.
Guys, he's the real deal. Like, I've seen him in action. He's the real deal.
Yeah. So I've done the things where I can memorize a whole audience full of people's names, and I can learn skills really quickly, like languages and things like that. So many people see that, they want to have that superpower, but they don't realize where it comes from is really for me, it's a deep-seated desire to learn everything I can, because when I started out, when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia. And I was literally, by one of the teachers, he was not a great teacher, I will be honest with you, nobody liked him, but by one of the teachers, he said I was unteachable. That I just, because I had these learning challenges, there's no way I can really excel academically. And we know now that I was kind of miscategorized, basically, if you want to be objective about it. And I don't want to post blame, but the system was flawed. But that's what led me to try to learn everything I can about the memory and the brain. I became obsessed about it, mainly because somebody told me I couldn't do it, right? So I'm very motivated when somebody tells me I can't do something. I wanted to prove the bastard wrong. And all of that motivation, and it's negative or positive, whatever you want to call it, that led to my Guinness record, and led to me wanting to master all these things and learn these things, and then eventually, teach them and everything. But you could say that it all started with that curiosity, that desire to learn something, to, in that case, to prove the guy wrong, that I had more ability than I was being told.
Yeah. I think what also happens is, we're told we can't do something, and some people accept that. And a lot of people accept it. Okay, I can't do that. I'm going to be subject to this. But then there are certain people, out there that go and have some degree of disagreement about that, like, and however that shows up. But then what happens is you got to then figure your way out, because if you have a teacher, somebody that is, that has authority, that is a leader, that somebody like, okay, well, I have to listen to this person because this person obviously knows better than me. And that person's telling you that. Go ahead.
It's tough. It's tough about that, because I don't want to give people the impression you just always like disagree with authority and it'll always work out. Like, I was a 14-year-old kid. I was a 14-year-old kid who thought I knew more about learning than the teachers that were trying to teach me, who had degrees in it and everything. Turns out I was right, but I would gather that most of the time that scenario plays out in this world, the kid's wrong, right? So you have to have a little bit of humility, but so it's really important to try to look at objective markers and objective measures. And I was actually pretty good at teaching myself, kind of self-directed learning, but I had a lot of difficulty in kind of the lecture an exam type of format, that sort of thing. And that's really what I tried to tackle with my memory techniques is how can we master this type of format, going to the textbooks, memorizing facts and figures, being able to regurgitate them. When I was curious about something, like I taught myself basic computer programming when I was 12 because I was really interested in it.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, this was like the early 90s.
Like, yeah.
But this was like the early 90s, so nobody knew that was a big deal because computers were so new, and it wasn't like, Silicon Valley wasn't a big deal. It was like before eBay and even before Google. So it wasn't like programmers are these geniuses. They just thought I was fooling around with a hobby. They didn't see like this is still, I'm old, but this is still when you had like keyboarding class, a class that taught you how to type fast, as if that's a skill people use anymore, right?
I love it.
But actually, Robert's comment there is really, really key, is the law of innocence. The limitations don't exist. Another way to say it is there's something in the advertising world, but it's also in the education world, which is the curse of knowledge. Once you know a subject really well, you do have blind spots. Knowledge gives you, it's kind of like, the best example I can think of, I don't know if this is a great metaphor, but let's say like you go to a doctor presenting certain symptoms, they're probably going to look at, the last 100 patients that had similar symptoms and think what's the most likely culprit. But if you have something rare, very often people don't get a good diagnosis for like 10, 20 years until they talk to like multiple people because it's because of that curse of knowledge. Like, oh no, I've seen this before, and they think they know what it is, and so that's like assumptions are made basically. And that's nothing to say against doctors. It's a human nature thing. In
it's the
same
way our
way,
brains work, and I love that. That's why I say our brains work a particular way, and if you let your brain work for you, if you let it work for you, like just on autopilot, you're going to have, for the most part, certain conclusions. You can figure it out. If you're curious, if you're open, if you do what you did at the age of 12 and you don't have that, have that knowledge that you're not supposed to be able to know how to do this, then
and it's also, I think that it's okay to defy the experts if they're trying to limit you too much. If they just say, like I've had a number of people very recently who were veterans come back from Iraq and Afghanistan dealing with head injuries because of IEDs. That's a very big problem nobody's talking about, and it actually contributes to the suicide rate. When somebody has
is that what it is?
Yeah, so the concussive wave of so all the body armor protects you from shrapnel for the most part. I don't want to say all of it, and the body armor does a really good job keeping people alive. That's why people, the life expectancy is much higher than in previous wars. Put it that way. But the IED sends a shock wave through the body, and what it does is shakes your brain around and causes injury in there. And sometimes you don't really know the extent of it until later. And there's some theories, I can't say this is conclusive yet, but there's some evidence, I should say, pointing to the idea that many cases of PTSD are actually a form of brain injury. So we do know that when people get a brain injury, depression is a very common side effect of your brain just not working right. So it's not necessarily, oh, I saw horrible things during the war. Like some of these people, the way they figured it out is they went into behavioral psychotherapy, sitting on the couch talking to somebody about it, and yes, Sarah, you figured it out. It's interesting that you make a comment about how do I comment on this thing. that's beautiful. I love that. So it's so meta.
Does this thing work?
We love you, girl. We love you. I'm so glad to have you here. It's kind of a casual live Facebook live we're doing here with my friend. Anyways, long story short, you sit down, you do the psychotherapy, and some of these people are saying, hey, I'm not really feeling sad about some of the points in the war. Yeah, I saw some terrible things, but I don't think that's why I'm getting depressed. I'm getting depressed for some unexplained reason. Then they do brain scans and they find that there's injuries, and the theory is that is leading to some of the depression. We do know that people with head injuries have a much higher incidence, or I should say soldiers with head injuries, much higher incidence of suicide. So like there's a correlation to that. Yeah. And I didn't want to bring everybody down here. We're talking about curiosity, but it's really important to understand that, your healthy brain is a curious machine. It is it is thrive on positivity. So if you're feeling a lot of negativity and everything, you could really there are some things you can do to make your brain healthier. You can change your diet, you can exercise, getting better blood flow, and you can also do brain training exercises. all of these things can help you have a healthier brain, and that actually leads to less depression, greater quality of life, things like that.
So it's like if you work out, if you go to the gym, if you eat good, your body's going to function a little bit better. We just know that.
Probably one of the best.
The brain has kind of a version of that, right?
Yeah, well, actually, the best way to think of when people ask what's good for my brain is if you take whatever is good for your body and double it, that's your brain. And what I mean by that is your brain is very sensitive. So if you think of anything like, what do organs need? Need oxygen. Hey, greetings from Italy there. Oh, and Daryl put a great comment up there as well. So if you think of oxygen, you need oxygen to survive. You need nutrition to survive. You need, blood flow, things like that. Your brain needs these, and it's much more sensitive to their deprivation. So if you're choking or something, and you have a lack of oxygen, that affects your brain first, right? And kills off brain cells first. Your liver is going to survive a lot longer. Now, I'm not trying to get morbid here, but I just want to say that the same is true with nutrition. If you have a bunch of sugar in your bloodstream and you get a big insulin spike, it actually affects your brain first and most dramatically. When most people think of, how's this like, think of alcohol, you think of how's this alcohol affecting my liver, but the very fact that you're getting inebriated, it's affecting your brain. So nutrition, and by the way, I'm a big fan of alcohol myself, so I don't believe in abstinence for these things. I think moderation and healthy choices, just basically getting good habits. I do a little bit of physical exercise every morning, something that gets you panting, breathing heavy. I like to box against the bag, but other people do other things. And as long as you're getting your blood flowing, if it's good for your body, it's really good for your brain. So if you're having problems with your memory and focus and things like that, anything that is a healthy lifestyle choice for your body, it'll actually help your brain.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's a separate thing,
Yeah, but they're connected. They're so connected.
It's in a way your brain is the canary in the coal mine. Your brain is the sensitive one that fails first. If you're think of like if you have bad nutrition or you haven't had iron or something, you'll feel lightheaded. Your brain is telling you things before the rest of your body.
Does your brain kind of like not look after itself in a way? I mean, that's kind of like, I'm really curious about that. Does the brain kind of not know to look after itself in the normal day of life?
It's more like your brain is just, it's the human brain is by a huge margin the most complex single thing in the known universe. There's a bunch of, I don't have the stats in front of me, but there's something like as many connections between parts of the brain as there are stars in the sky. Like, it's an incredibly complex tool, and it manages everything. If you compare it to all the other animals, our brain is huge compared to the size of our body. There are some animals that have bigger brains, but not compared to the size of the body. And that's really, really key, because the brain is there to control your body. So a bigger animal needs a bigger brain. But because we have such a large brain compared to the rest of our body, a lot of that brain function is going towards other tasks like thinking and planning and imagination and learning and things like that. And that's why, humans are just, able to do all these astounding things. And, our closest intelligence ancestor, like apes, can like pick up a stick and poke an anthill and stuff. Like they've got some of it, but we've got so much more, and it's because it's so complex. And like any machine that's really, really complex, it's just sensitive if you don't maintain it right.
So a couple questions I have. So I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about psychiatry and the way that psychiatrists used to, well, that they still do, you get a lot of prescriptions and there's drugs and stuff like that. Are there a lot of things that they're doing that they're still doing right now that were figured out 50, 60 years ago, that they're still prescribing things the same way, but now they're learning new things? They're like, that's really not the way we're going to do it. We're going to start to do it other ways. I'm real interested in if you studied that and what you know about that.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest trend I've seen is incorporating brain training or other forms of therapy into medication. So when I was first diagnosed ADHD, kids were being drugged, right? And in some cases, incredibly high doses by today's standards. I think there's a lot of irresponsibility, and there was some corruption. There was some times where some therapists were getting basically getting a bonus for everybody they diagnosed. There was an incentive, and some schools were their funding model was based on the number of people who had ADD. So there was a financial incentive to diagnose or overdiagnose kids, and there was a lot of fallout from that. That was like, in the early 2000s. But what I'd say right now is it seems like microdosing or smaller doses combined with other activities is becoming very popular. This is from what I'm getting from my therapist friends as well, is the idea that because we know that the brain is plastic, that your brain does change depending on what actions you do. Right now, so in the past, you might say, okay, I'm depressed. Here's a medication to stop being depressed, but you just take that medication. The problem is you eventually build up a tolerance to that medication and you need more. So I'm not anti-medication. I actually do, truth be told, I do Ritalin from time to time when I'm doing, when I really have to be very productive. But I don't do it every day. I don't want to build up a tolerance to it. I want it to be when I'm working, and then I can, detox in other days, if you will.
Interesting.
And everybody has to have a different choice. For many
Yeah.
years, I was very anti-medication, but now I see the value in it. For other medications, like you're talking about, the most responsible, or I think the place where I think it's moving to is, okay, we're going to give you this, depression medication, but it's going to be a small dose, but it's just enough to get you out of depression a little bit so that you can participate in therapy. Because what they found is if you try to treat somebody with some sort of behavioral therapy or something while they're feeling incredibly depressed, you don't make any progress because they don't have the mental capability to fight that. It's very similar to if a child is so ADD, they're bouncing off the walls so much, I can't teach them the brain training exercises that helped me, right?
Yeah.
But if I can calm them down a little bit, with a small dose, and then teach them strategies, then the strategies, over time, it's a skill you learn, you get better at it. Hopefully the strategies will take over and then you get the long-term results. So that's kind of, I think, where things are going.
I see that as like my visual is, just picture a ladder, there's a ladder and somebody doesn't really know how to use a ladder. So you put a hand right there and put another hand and put a foot and then you go, okay, now lift the other foot. They lift the other, and then, they're unstable. So you hold them up a little bit, and you just, you look for, what do I need to do? How can I help you without doing it for you? And the conversation I was having is that this person had been relying on drugs for so long that drugs were the reason they were getting better, was Daryl having to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. Brain is a muscle. It's a great point. I would actually say more than just a crossword puzzle that Daryl was saying. Also, brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. So if you're right-handed, use your left hand. It's really, really helpful.
Why is that helpful? Like I get it's helpful, but
sure.
But why is it?
Well, anything that stimulates the brain to do something that it's not used to doing, learning new skills, especially motor function skills, seem to have the biggest result in the brain. The problem is once you get good at them, the effect is less. That is, the brain has to work really hard in the beginning of learning a new muscle coordination skill to make a whole bunch of connections. So if I teach you how to juggle or teach you how to do a yo-yo. There's a really famous case of a guy who recovered from stroke by learning a whole bunch of yo-yo tricks. But the thing is, the majority of the benefit you get is in the beginning of it. So what I would say to Daryl is, if you're doing a crossword puzzle, once you get good at crosswords, then switch to Sudoku or switch to, juggling or something that's still a mental challenge. I actually encourage people to try to pick up a hobby, to try learning new skills. So if you're learning, nice comment, Robert. I like that. Yeah. So I often say that learning new skills is the best training of the brain. So pick up like a musical instrument, learn new songs. Try to pick up a language. Like those sorts of things stimulate the brain, and they have a longer term effect than playing games. Games seem to have a limited effect. Once you're good at the game, the effect on the brain is less.
So you either need people that have higher skill or a higher skill so that to create the challenge. You need the challenge.
Yeah, once you get to a very high skill level, you may be very smart. You might have other benefits, but you're not actually stimulating the brain to grow. We're talking the physical connection of new cells and new connections in the brain. It seems like the majority of that stimulation comes when learning a skill. When refining your skills and getting better at it, very minor changes are made in the brain. That's what we do know. So if you want to grow your brain and make lots of connections really quickly, tackle something that is not a very difficult thing to do, but it's just difficult for you. Like I said, oddly enough, brushing your teeth with the opposite hand is really, really tough to learn. But you're not gonna like, you're not gonna like break your nose if you fail at it or something. It doesn't have very high stakes. You know what I mean? So
right. That's
you
right. But what I think it does, I'm thinking as you're talking about that, but what does it do? I'm being curious. What does it do? Well, what it does is it opens me up for a different level of possibility. Like I now have, so if I use my left hand, right, and I brush my teeth and I do that. My friend Armando talks about that. He brushes his teeth with his left hand and he switches, does things like that. And then now I'm operating like, even if it's a little bit different level, at that different level, I have a different viewpoint. I could, if I'm curious, have a different perspective. Like I'm going to look at things a little differently from this point. And,
well, I would say, yeah, anybody who even tackles this, you're a naturally curious person. So it does open you up, psychologically to things. But the main thing that you want to think of the brain as, if we're way oversimplify things, is it's a series of connections. It's a lot like the internet. It's a ton of tiny computers connected to each other that makes a really smart thinking thing. So all you're doing is you're encouraging some of those cells to connect in ways they haven't before, and that makes physical connections. And it seems as though that overall has a preventative effect on Alzheimer's and other dementia and things like that. Is if you force new connections on a regular basis. So there's some interesting studies on this. One was in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's 2014. They did a study of over 2,000 people, and the cool thing was most of them were over 50. It wasn't your typical grad student study. And what they found is that by doing brain training, and the specific type of brain training was learning new skills. By doing brain training, they actually cut their risk for Alzheimer's and dementia by as much as half. Wow. And it was really, really powerful. Yeah. And the main thing is, once you got good at the skill, you lost the benefit. So keep on trying new skills. If you're a person, in your 40s or 50s and you've always wanted to play the guitar, go for it. Don't bring it out at a party if you're not good, though. Like have a heart. But
that's just not going to turn out good for you or anybody else.
Yeah, it's not, or anybody else. Absolutely. But but to stimulate the brain, try new things, especially at an older age. And it turns out even at 50 plus, the benefit is quite stark. It's a huge difference. Now I want to actually talk about your curiosity thing. Yeah. One of the things, here's a little memory technique for everybody. And I know we've got a few people on here right now, and they'll probably have a rebroadcast later. We'll put on YouTube. So we'll probably get, a bunch of hits afterwards. So I wanted to give something that kind of as a reward for people who are this far in. One of the little simple memory techniques for names is actually to develop curiosity. So the biggest mistake people make with names is they just think of it as a mechanical thing. And one of the reasons why women are better at name recognition than men, sorry to say it, it's very, very true. Okay. in the scientific studies. In the neuroscience studies, it's very, very true. And men are better with the mechanical stuff and spatial reasoning and everything. But there's always the 10 to 20% of each gender, which is almost opposite. So we shouldn't use it as a way to stereotype. But one of the reasons it's believed that women are better at recalling people's names is simply because of a desire to do so, a desire to connect. Men in personality tests tend to be more interested in things, and women tend to be more interested in people and how they're connected, that sort of thing. So one of the ways you can develop this is simply to ask questions. And a little memory technique I tell people is every time you see people's faces, try this for a week. When you're, walking down the street, hopefully not during COVID, or, you're watching things on TV or something, anytime you see a new face, in the back of your mind, start asking yourself, I wonder what their name is. And then, go through, even watching a movie, I wonder what his name is. I wonder what her name is. And by asking that question, you're training your brain to be curious. And you'll find that after even just a week of doing this, it happens without you even thinking about it. You look at somebody and you have a natural curiosity for what their name is. the benefit of that is people who do this, when you actually hear the name, so let's say you're approaching me and I don't know your name, and in the back of my head I say, I wonder what his name is, right? And then when you say the word Martin, my brain is going to jump on that. It's going to pounce on that because your brain wants to answer questions that you've already asked.
We
So
call
it's
it
about
close in the loop, right? It wants to close in the loop
yeah.
that you created. Yeah, I love that. Okay.
Yeah, so try that even with people's names that you do know. I wonder what their name is, and your brain will go, "Oh, you know their name," and it'll pipe up. But it's developing that curiosity, and by doing that naturally, it makes a big difference for your recall. Something like 30% better recall for names just by doing that tactic.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I used to be really bad with names, and then you taught me something to do, and I got better. And now I guess that my brain only
Makes a difference, huh?
it needed a new one. It needed a new one. I haven't heard this one yet, so I'm going to use this one. I wonder
Yeah, it
what that
makes a big
name is.
difference.
Well, and I did that, so I didn't look down, and I said, I wonder what that guy from Italy's name is. Like, I think it's a Giovanni, and like, or Gianni. So it was close,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it was really close. It wasn't, So and I said, I'm not going to ask it. I was going to wait and ask it, when I was here. But at least it's closer. It's closer than. Uh, I guess there's another way that we operate. And that's the one thing about the brain. That's the one thing I like about the brain, is that it operates a particular way until we find a new, better way to operate. And the old way of operating just goes away. And it's hard to even remember it. Like, okay, how did I used to do that? Well, it doesn't even matter anymore. So it's hard to recall those things because you're just operating at a new level.
Yeah, and there used to be a theory called the hardwired brain that was the previous model of the brain. It actually really held back a lot of brain science because we know now that your brain is constantly changing itself. In fact, I'd recommend. I have a friend who's a researcher, Norman Doidge. He's a best-selling author too, and he wrote a book, The Brain That Changes Itself. It's a fantastic read if you want to know kind of a background on this. And so back in the day, let's look back to like say that when Bill Clinton was president, and in those times it was kind of the early days of neuroscience. And what they did was they took all the cells of the body at some point and they put them in a petri dish, and you could stimulate those cells with electricity and chemistry and other ways to divide. Right. So your heart cells, everything else. So it seems that just about every cell in your body can divide, except for cells that were either nerve cells or very close to nerve cells. It was tough to get a heart cell to divide, for example, but a brain cell just did not divide, no matter how much you stimulated it to
Oh,
do it.
wow.
So the theory was that you're born with a certain number of brain cells. They obviously grow when you're a child, and then they reach a certain point at puberty. The theory was, and then you basically start to lose them. They slowly die over time, and some people they die faster than others, and that's Alzheimer's. That was the theory. It was wrong. It was dead wrong, but it actually led to a lot of policies that we still live with today. So the idea of the hardwired brain, the idea that, let's say, if you learn a certain set of habits or you exhibit a certain amount of behavior, the idea that you can't change that behavior, it became really adversarial. This is the time when academia really fought kind of the self-help movement of the early 80s. Talking like Tony Robbins and things like that. People saying, "Oh, you can change your life," and academia and the scientific community said, "No, this is all BS." Well, as it turns out, the scientific theory was BS, and the self-help people actually had something going for them because the brain is not hardwired. What they didn't know is stem cells. What they didn't know was that stem cells and also dendrites. So your current brain cells, although they don't grow new cells, they can grow new connections. So they can create many, many more connections. So the brain can constantly create and destroy connections, and that's really what it's all about. And in some cases of brain injury, the brain can actually there's pockets of stem cells where it can actually heal those parts of the brain as well. So that's what we didn't know. We didn't have the understanding of stem cells in this time that we do today. And it's really important that we get this right, because the reason why I brought up Clinton is that they created a piece of law, a piece of legislation that led to the mass incarceration of millions of people, especially people of color. And the legislation was the 3 strikes rule. It was where Hillary Clinton, what ruined her presidential hopeful campaign was when way back in the day, when she came up with the term super predator, to talk about some people who were career criminals and mostly people of color, right? So that's where that really affected the Black community probably more than any other single piece of legislation, because
Yeah.
it allowed you basically to throw the book at somebody if they had more than three strikes.
On the
And it was
third
based on
strike, yeah.
it was based on brain science. The science of the
Wow.
day was that, if these guys keep on committing the crime, then they're never going to change. So rehabilitation
They
is
are
BS.
a particular way, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
saying
yeah. And
you're a
so,
particular way because you do this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were people
Wow.
saying that you're hardwired for smoking, you're hardwired for violent behavior, you're hardwired for greed. Like they were like just taking this to a whole new extreme. And there was a fledgling group of scientific community that believed in brain plasticity. And although my background is not as a scientist, I'm more of an educator.
Mhm.
I was very vocal about this. I went on over 2,000 interviews and I was talking about it constantly. I actually had people who were in the scientific community saying I was being really irresponsible and doing what today they would call you're spreading fake news. But it turns out they were wrong and I was right.
Wow.
They were the one, but very often an old theory has to die with the people that started that theory. So it really needed youth to come up to show a different perspective. And it was actually some of the great work that was done with veterans, showing that people could have a head injury, and then veterans are incredibly disciplined people,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
just
we
by
are.
nature, but by training. So tell them to do, if someone's having motor function problems because they've injured part of their brain, tell them to, walk with the bars back and forth 100 times a day for 2 years. They'll do it. And then, we see that, oh my God, they can walk better. Their brain is changing, Now, it's not to say that it's magic. It takes a lot of effort, and it doesn't actually happen for everybody. There's actually several cases where people, do the exercises over and over and see no improvement. So the picture is not 100% yet, but we do know that the people who see no change, they are the vast minority. The majority of people's brains change their whole life, whether they like it or not.
Which is what Daryl was saying. The brain's a muscle. The
Yeah.
brain's
Oh,
a
yeah. And
muscle.
hey,
You
Daryl,
gotta,
your
you
other
gotta,
comment about my books, I want to actually direct people to farrowmemory.com if you guys are interested. That's our new online course.
you gotta just type it in.
And it's updated and everything, and it's yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah, farrowmemory.com. Thanks. And it has illustrations and everything, and we've updated it with all the latest science and theory behind it. So I'm really proud of that program on there. So I'd love some of your viewers to take a look at it and tell me
We'll
what you
leave it
think.
up for a few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I
Um,
love it. Let's
yeah.
let's talk about it, something that I thought about that you brought up. So we have science and the curiosity theory. My program, a big design of the program and a big outcome of the program is to loosen this rockness or this stiffness that we have. So you have people that step into life and they have a perspective and they feel that their perspective is true and they've got the evidence for that. We have the evidence because we're smart people. I mean, like you said, our brain works really well, and even the the ones that aren't so smart, the brains work pretty good, and they come up with reasons. We come up with why we do what we do, and it makes sense to us. It's survival. It's how we thrive. It's how we get what we want to do. So I have a
Mhm.
system of being a particular way, and it works, and I get as much
Okay.
reward as I can, and I
So you
avoid
have
the
a
pain as I
philosophy of
can. Yeah, we have a philosophy for living. So then something new comes along, like this new neuroscience, right? And
Mhm.
and so some people may be holding on to the old way of thinking. In the curiosity theory, what we want to do is we want to teach people why you take on a new way of thinking. And what
Mhm.
we do, and I just want your thought on this, is that we operate in a series of needs. Human beings operate in needs, and we have lower level needs. Let's say Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Survival, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem. And so we look at those, but the higher level needs, self-transcendence and self-actualization, are beyond our personal needs, but they're really for the world, the community. And when you start to look at those needs, you seem to let go of the ones that are more personal, more survival. Like, I don't need to worry about that. I'm okay, and
Mhm.
and I don't need to worry about my ego. So I can humble myself. I can express some humility and go, let me
Mhm.
try on this other idea. Even though I spent my whole life, my whole career, every ounce of energy I could to come up with this conclusion.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm asking you, I'm actually asking you, how does that shift, if people take that shift, how does that change the brain? That shift.
Yeah,
Does that make
absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Maslow because I always thought that Nietzsche was never really given his due for that same sort of thinking, where Nietzsche and Darwin were at odds, where Darwin was talking about it's all about survival, but then Nietzsche was saying for the human experience, it goes beyond survival to, he called it the quest for power. And that might have been a bit more like, I don't know, greedy
People
sounding.
didn't like it so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little Gordon Gekko sounding there, so it
Yeah.
didn't have the best PR, but it was essentially what you say, where that humanity, in order to have full fulfillment, needs to have more than just food and drink. That's the fundamental behind the idea of our political system, and why people quest, for freedom, right? It's not
Yes.
just, if we were all in just cages, and we all had one boring job to do for the rest of our lives, and if all of our needs were taken care of in like that sort of traditional model of what we think society wants, we would be miserable and want to kill ourselves because our wants are not taken into account. And the more I think you grow through life, you realize that your wants are your needs. The human spirit does need to desire to soar. It does need
Yes.
to transcend that and to try new things. So so to answer your question, I think that what you're doing is it's almost like a Taoist or Zen view, where you're trying to, in a way, I want to learn everything there is to learn, but in the same sense, I want to unlearn some things too when I get too stuck in my ways. And the Taoist view is that happiness comes from unlearning things, that you get closer to nature, because your assumptions and everything get in the way of that. But I think it's a balance. Obviously, you need to learn how to use a computer to send somebody email and everything, and you need like something for practical reasons. But when you get to the point where you think you know everything, that's probably exactly the point where you're obsolete and you're way out of date, and you've got to unlearn a lot of that in order to learn a new thing. I think I learned this from Bruce Lee, but it's an old Zen parable, which is like that you have to empty your cup so it can be filled. And if you think your cup is full just because you have a degree or you have a credential or something like that, if you think you know it all, then that's, in my opinion, that's exactly the time when life is going to hit you upside the head and show you don't know nothing. It's a little Socratean too. I guess all of this kind of knowledge kind of comes together.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's what we do, and I guess that's the point, because, you come up with one way of thinking, and then you then live your life based on that way of thinking. And then when something doesn't work, they're like, well, that doesn't work. Well, and most people, I find, are going to take that way of thinking like a hammer, and just keep pushing it forward. Like, oh, okay, it's not working, but it's not because of me, because I figured this out. So I'm going to just keep slamming through the wall until my way of thinking breaks through that wall and I'm on the other side. And then I'm going to continue my way of thinking, because it's my thinking and I am my thinking.
And I mean, this touches on so many things, like understanding your shadow and your weaknesses too, like the Jungian idea of embracing your shadows instead of trying to avoid it like the plague, or I like to follow kind of the ancient Greek view, is the two things that you should never stop learning are more about the world and more about yourself. So know thyself and know the world. And we spend so much time knowing the world, and we don't go inside to know ourselves and to understand our blind spots and understand where our arrogance is getting in the way of things, and trying to be aware of that. I would not be like for me, I'm a great business person. I succeeded. I became an international bestseller, sold millions of dollars worth of that stuff, but I never managed anybody, right? When I started Farrow Communications here, where we do PR and marketing services that I got. Oh, am I? There we go.
I
Okay.
want to do that so I can see. That's right. There.
Yeah. So I was able to get on a lot of shows, like Dr. Oz is up there, for example, and stuff. So I was able to get a lot of press, and now I do that for other people. Now, going in that role, I have my point is that I have a lot of employees right now. I say a lot, like we got about 10 employees that I'm managing, and we're growing. I'm hiring new people, but I had to kind of be humble to think, I'm a great businessman, but am I really? Because I haven't had to do this particular thing before. I haven't had to hire a lot of people. I haven't had to manage a lot of people. And I became a student all of a sudden. The black belt
Yes.
became a white belt all of a sudden. I had to learn how to do this. And if I didn't have that humility, if I would have just approached it with my previous success and tried to apply it to that, it would have been a huge failure.
So there become, like you said, humility. So then you use humility and then curiosity. Like, how do I do this? Like, I don't.
Yeah. Like in my case, I'm very driven to accomplish some of my goals. So if I were to assume everybody who's coming into my business is exactly like me, that'd be a huge fallacy, because they have their goals. Their goals are not the same as the company.
Yes.
They want to forward their career. They want to use this as a tool to forward their career. So understanding each person's individual goals and motivations, and then how to talk to them. How do you criticize somebody? Some people you're too harsh. Some people you're too nice. So there's a lot to it. And if I would have just stuck with my previous way of thinking, treating them like a mini me or something, it would have been a complete disaster. So I had to start over. And I just wanted to give that example, because a lot of people think, like, it's easy to say, oh, be humble and reinvent yourself. But a lot of people don't realize there is a real practical reason to do it. It's not just a bumper sticker. This really does end up in real dollars and cents. It's one of the reasons why this company is growing, is because I think we're managing it very well. And also because I have incredibly talented people who work for me who make me look good every single day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's finish up. I'd like to know a little bit more. I know you talked about that. And first off, I want to thank you for hanging out. There's so much amazing knowledge that you've given us. And every time I talk to you, man, I learn so much. I just walk away and just kind of. I remember the last time we talked, I think it was at Epic or something, and we talked for a little bit at dinner, and then I remember just kind of before I pulled out, I was sitting in my car going, okay, what did he say? What did he say? And then I took out my journal, like, he said a couple things. So, and then I think I actually videotaped you I had a question for you, and I took my iPhone out and I said, okay, answer the question, and then I actually have that question that you answered. It was really good. So, first out, so thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being gracious and coming and hanging out with us, and all that you've given. Tell us a little bit about what you do, about Farrow Communications, about the memory course and all that.
Oh, sure.
And what people are going to get out of it, and just
well, actually, I would like to actually ask. I have a request for your audience. I have two main businesses aside from a couple of things I'm dabbling in. The main business is my we call it the memory business, which is based on my memory program, the Farrow method, and that's at farrowmemory.com. Please check that out. It's brand new site. We can still actually add comments to it, so please check that out, and you can forward any comments to Martin, any ways that you want to improve it, because we're just in the early stages of kind of rebooting that and starting it up and running ads to it. And we're going to have more coming out. I'm working on courses on individual language study, for example, a lot of memory tricks to remember things like biology, AP biology, and periodic table and things like that. So please give me some feedback on that. The other thing is my other business, Farrow Communications, is our main business. We do PR and marketing for companies and individuals, a lot of authors, and we seem to be the best at getting a large number of media bookings for the cheapest price for people. I won't get into all of our prices right now, but we actually have been inundated with so much business. We actually can't take on any new clients for 2 weeks. We have to bump it to the next cycle. But if you go to farrowcommunications.com, you can book a strategy session with me and my team. And if you're a qualified lead, if you have a book coming up, or if you have something that you can get publicity for, then we'll actually give you a free session, no charge. And I joke around with this. I haven't said this on the internet yet, so this will be the first time I say, it's just like your dealer. The first one is free. So terrible joke. But the first strategy session is free, and anybody who wants to have advice on your marketing, I can help you with that. I've been there myself. Went from a little bachelor apartment to selling thousands, 100,000 units and more. And we know how to get there. one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing for Farrow Communications is actually I'm editing and filming a commercial. We have a production crew, actors, a script, everything,
Wow.
and we're gonna have our first. Yeah, thanks. It's pretty exciting, and we're gonna have our first rough cut in about 3 weeks. And I would like to have some entrepreneurs to review it, take a look at it, and give me their honest feedback about ways to improve. We definitely need a lot of testing on our target market before we put it up live to give people an idea of what it is. I'm really good friends with the Harmon brothers, people over at Harmon Brothers, Daniel Harmon and them. They made Purple Mattress, they made Squatty Potty,
wow.
Lumi deodorant,
Yeah.
all those, Fiber Fix, those commercials. And so I'm following that formula. So there's a lot of jokes, a lot of comedy, a lot of cut takes and everything. It's pretty complex, but I think it'll put us on the map. And I'd love to have, if there's any entrepreneurs watching or anybody who's an author who has ever been considering PR and marketing services, Robert, absolutely. Yeah, book a call. And I'd also love to have people, watch this rough cut and give me their opinion on it to try to improve it. I'd love to have kind of beta testers so you can see something before the internet sees it, which almost never happens.
Wow. Is it going to be Squatty Farrow or something?
No, it's a pretty good shtick, actually. It's basically talking about the kind of the author's plight or the business person's plight, where they have something of really great quality, but nobody seems to be giving them attention, and you have a competitor that kind of surpasses you, and it's kind of that feeling of like, what am I doing with my life? I'm putting out so much effort, but I'm not getting ahead. And I'll be honest with you, the culprit is
life.
well, some people's lives, unless you can break through that. But the culprit, I think, is that a lot of people buy into kind of these cheesy marketing gimmicks, the next big shiny little tool or technique or this social media platform or this person's course or something, instead of doing something that has a track record that really works. So that's basically the thesis of it. We have a character that plays the author that's struggling, and how we fix it and everything. And it's a lot of comedy and fun. I won't give away any of the jokes, but it's good stuff.
I look forward to it. I really do look forward to it, guys. I can't recommend Dave and what he does higher. I actually have his CD packages. That's how long it's been since I've been working on the stuff. I've got the memory one. There's one. There was one for the Bible. I think there was a Bible one.
Yeah. Actually, right here.
Yeah.
Here is Bible Brain Trainer right there.
Yes.
And that's like memory and stuff. We sold, a lot of copies of those.
Yeah.
No, it's still
good stuff, and it works. It works. Sorry, but it works, guys. It works. It's good stuff. I'm gonna definitely check out Farrow Memory, and I'm gonna book a session because I got stuff I need to work on. Yeah.
But go on to farrowcommunications.com and top right hand corner, and Robert, book that call. I'd love to chat with you. Looking forward. I'm just awesome. Robert's comment there.
There's a long comment. Let me look at this one. I think we're all covered. Look over like we're looking over that thing.
There we go. No, he's talking about a lot of the wisdom from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's Dao Jeet Kune Do was fantastic. I've got that dog-eared and read million. A lot of people don't realize Bruce Lee was a philosophy major in college, and he really combined a lot of Eastern and Western philosophy, much like he combined Wing Chun with Western style boxing to make Jeet Kune Do. So it's a fantastic pursuit. But I'm actually talking about Robert's there. He's gonna book a call to talk about his book. Love to talk to new authors. Awesome. Can't wait.
He's got a great book coming out. I highly recommend. So, Dave, thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it. And you've done exactly why I do this for me. So people often ask me this, and Marcy says, "Why do you do that show?" And I do the show because I actually ask questions, and I'm actually genuinely curious about what I talk about, and I'm learning. I'm like, "Whoa, that's really interesting." So there's some perspectives that I got, some ways of approaching my own life that you've given me that I'm going to go back and listen to and use those perspectives to go to the next level. And I really appreciate every time I talk to you for that.
And I want to make one final note here about social media, the way we are here. If you look at you know, people, if you're ever looking at your feed and you think, oh, why is this person doing this Facebook live? There's like only 10, 20 people on there and stuff, or whatever. And this is also being broadcast later on for a replay. So we'll probably get
Yes.
like 1,000 hits eventually on it. But
Yeah.
but even if it was only like the 10, 20 people, like we just found, you know, Robert is going to be a potential client for me. That's how you build a business. Don't ever think you're too good for, you know, any sort of press, or, oh, I only want to go on like Dr. Oz or this or that. You know, it was really great. The author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, he used to always say he'll do every possible piece of press that he can. He's been on people's blogs. He's done so much stuff. No, Robert, it's actually
Greg's the same way. Greg Reed does the same thing. He has that same philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is actually, let me just type this in here, faircommunications.com. Yeah, we actually have Greg Reed as a client, and the fact that he did all of those shows, and all the smaller shows, we were able to use that as B-roll to show the bigger shows. We got him on Business Insider. We got him on 2 San Diego television stations, the Fox station, I believe the NBC station, and we also did a bunch of radio shows, a bunch of other things for him. Huge result with his, you know, with his book. It wouldn't have happened if he hadn't done, you know, some of the smaller stuff and really, you know, got his chops going. So that's a really perfect example. And here, this has been a very, very good use of my time. It's a pleasure. Connected with Robert and got some content on you know, on Facebook. So I just wanted to tell that to people, is like, you know, always do the hustle. You know, not everything's going to be the Today Show or everything, but all of it is really worth it. And as somebody who's been on the Today Show, even the Today Show isn't the Today Show. It doesn't, like, there's no one thing that launches your career. It's all the little things that you do. And just talking to you, man, was worth it, even if nobody was watching. Just sitting here chatting about curiosity, getting me thinking. It's getting me motivated and amped and pumped for doing my next project. I'm doing a big writing day today. So that's all worth it. And so don't get too caught up in what other people are doing, or, oh, should I be doing this or shouldn't I? It's totally worth it. Just take that next step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, as the Buddha said.
Thanks. I appreciate you hanging out with me.
My pleasure.
Really,
Take care.
really, thank you very, very much. Cheers.